Hey, just creating a quick video to talk about vibe designing. There's a good chance that if you're watching this, you've heard of vibe coding, and you'd be right to say, well, vibe designing, is that the same thing? Is it just kind of a marketing term, what have you? In this video, I want to just do a couple quick things to clarify and give some examples of when you would vibe code versus vibe design, the pros and cons of each of them. So if you've heard of vibe coding, then you already know it is essentially just using natural language text prompts to generate a actual functioning application. And the functioning part is really the key to vibe coding. You do care about there being code generation because the intent is to actually use that output in a live setting. You can imagine basic CRUD apps, or you've got a side hustle, you got something and you really want it to be an actual functioning application that serves some sort of a purpose, right? Vibe designing actually sounds very similar when I describe it, right? It is also using natural language text prompts in addition to kind of other multimodal input types that we'll talk about to create things like high fidelity prototypes. One of the keys though, and maybe the distinction that's most important to point out, is that the vibe design experience is less about creating a functional app, and it's more about creating something that captures a vibe, a flow, an aesthetic, a feel. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So if you're at this point saying those sound pretty similar, you'd be right to assume that. The key distinction though really lies in kind of two parts. The first one is multimodality. So typically vibe coding, it is multimodal, but the use case is oftentimes going to lend itself best to just text prompts. What do I mean by that? Well, you could start with a screenshot, but you might not rely on those in the long run. You're going to continue to use text prompts to kind of manipulate what you're generating on the screen. And that makes total sense. In contrast, vibe designing really relies heavily on the multimodality inputs. Text, text plus image, text plus diagram, text plus XYZ. And the reason for that is oftentimes that things that are inherently aesthetic, what we're trying to convey, require images more than they require text at times. So you can imagine if you're trying to describe a specific aesthetic that you're looking for, it's often easier to just reference something that you find on the web or maybe an existing app that you've got. Okay, so the first part is again a little bit more subjective, but I just tend to find that multimodality factors even more into the vibe design experience. The absolute key difference, though, in my opinion, comes down to the editing experience. And there's a little background here. So vibe design tools tend to be canvas-based. They don't have the same rigidity of a kind of a code editing experience. And they instead feel a lot more like if you were in Google Slides or something. You can move things around the canvas, you can delete things, add things, you can combine AI and the multimodal AI experience with really simple editing tools. Drag and drop features, presets, templates, components that are already made for you. And so it's that combination of things that contributes to the vibe design experience where you say, I have a very specific thing that has to be in this comp or this prototype. That's where a vibe design tool is going to be really beneficial because you will use AI to maybe form the foundation of it, maybe to do some modifications, do things at scale, but then very simple things like moving a button around, changing colors, even just using a component that you're consistently kind of reusing and pulling that over from a side panel to do that. Like that is kind of the heart of the experience, is that you're not re-rendering something every time you make a change. You are just simply going in there, dragging things around, using AI to amplify or to augment your abilities and skills. And really, it's more holistic in that respect. The benefit of vibe designing is what we call at Vizzly action modality match, which is a fancy way of saying that the software can be adapted to the most kind of logical, intuitive ways for users to perform an action. So in a vibe coder, for example, if you wanted to move a button to a very specific part of the screen, you will likely be constricted or restricted from doing it in some cases because it has to adhere to certain layouts, because code is going to be in a layout. In contrast, the intuitive way to do that is you see it, click it, and you drag it. And you can do that on a canvas-based tool. That is one of the, I guess, principal benefits of Vibe designing, is that you're not constantly re-rendering code to do things, and you're not relying on text prompts to perform actions that otherwise could just be done with simple drag and drop tools or other design tool features. And that is kind of, in a nutshell, the biggest distinction and difference. So if you're at this point wondering like, okay, now I'm confused, I don't know, should I be vibe coding or vibe designing? The answer is honestly up to you. But if your goal is to, for example, preserve very specific parts of an existing experience, right? A certain button that has to be there, a certain set of things that need to be consistent across all the screens and they always need to be there, that's when you would want to vibe design, because it's going to be easy to preserve those things and then also to leverage AI to create new ones. If you want to create an app that you can actually use for work, that is an entirely different experience and a different end game. And that's when you would definitely want to vibe code. So really great tools that serve distinct purposes, and they tend to be really good for the things that they're intended for.